Good evening, everyone. This is the third webinar in the series Polish Talk, Mondays with Jewish Historical Institute, which is a cooperation between Mורשת, Mordechai Anelovich Memorial Education and Research Center, the Polish Institute in Tel Aviv, and the Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw. We are 2 days before International Holocaust Remembrance Day. The questions of how should the world commemorate the Holocaust, the victims, and what are the educational challenges while the years are passing by, getting more and more relevant every year. This event, we are hosting Dr. Bartosz Boris. We'll have 45 minutes of discussion and then approximately 15 minutes for questions. When we'll get to the questions session, please submit your questions via the Q&A button on your screen and not with the chat. Dr. Bartosz Boris is a historian, graduate of University of Wrocław, head of education department at the Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw. Interested in the history of Warsaw Ghetto, the Onek Shabbat group, the underground archive of Warsaw Ghetto, intellectual resistance of Polish Jews during World War II, Jewish sport in interwar Poland using the interpretation of the heritage methodologic in education. So good evening, Bartek.
Hello.
To begin with, please tell us about yourself. When did you start to work at JHI, and why did you choose to dedicate yourself to this job?
Okay, thank you now for invitation. Shalom, good afternoon, dobry wieczór Państwu. Thank you for invitation. I'm very happy to be here and have this meeting online. It looks that this pandemic gives us a great chance to organize events like this. So to answer your questions, I work at the JHI since November 2016, and since April 2020, I'm the head of education department. And well, I would say that as historian, I see the need of sharing the knowledge about the past that would be universal, but also understandable for people today. And it's not less important, based on historical scientific sources. And the JHI and its important collection that you already mentioned, the Underground Archive of Warsaw Ghetto, has a special and very unique mission of presenting a history of Polish Jews from Jewish perspective.
Sorry, I was mute. Thank you. When the education department was established, and what are the main goals of it?
Well, I'm not going to tell you the exact date, but it's a part of the structure of the JHI for years. And I would mention a few points that I would say are always our priority. Well, first of all, thanks to the great collection of the Ringelblum's archive, known also as the Underground Archive of Warsaw Ghetto, sharing the knowledge about the history and culture of Polish Jews, especially but not only related to the World War II and the Holocaust. And the heritage of Onek Shabbat group, the authors of the archive, is our top priorities. Almost 35,000 of pages, full of documents, full of information, and we see this heritage as a base for our educational activities. But also, what's important for us to share knowledge about it and share the selection of the most important documents with teachers, with people who are responsible for educating kids, students on this formal way of education. So we organize seminars for teachers where we share what's best and what's the most useful from our collection, and that can be used in Polish school, and that would fit to the curriculum of the education, the history and the Polish language course, but also other activities like preparing the educational materials and classes related to the exhibitions that we have at the JHI. We have 2 permanent exhibitions. One is devoted to the Onek Shabbat group. It's called What We've Been Unable to Shout Out to the World. And the other one is called Beit Tfilah, the House of Prayer. So those 2 permanent exhibitions. They're like covering those two topics, the war history of Polish Jews and the Holocaust, and the culture and the religion history, focused mostly on the example of Polish Jews, but also like organizing those regular classes for students, workshops, guided tours through our exhibition, and also walking tours through the former Jewish district and the Jewish cemetery. Or we have actually two cemeteries, but mostly we are focused on the Okopowa Street Cemetery. This is also important part of our activities, and we are focused on many groups. This is not only something for the teachers and the students, but some activities like guided tours or walking tours are also for the general audience. Mostly this is for inhabitants of Warsaw, but it's actually for everybody. And the last point that I would like to mention is also kind of dissemination of the educational materials. And one of our tools that we are using is the website Delet, that later on maybe I will tell you something more, but Delet is our website where we share some workshops, guided tours, presentations based on our materials. So what's there is like the selection of the best, or selection of documents like focus on one particular topic. So this is in our opinion, a website that fit to share some documents with some description that can be used by teachers, for example, at school. So this is not everything, but let's say the most important aspects of our educational activities.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to some of the points you mentioned. But how would you define your educational attitude toward the Holocaust and the specific subject you deal with in JHI?
Yeah, well, of course, as I mentioned, it's like presenting the Jewish history from the Jewish perspective. And you know, our collection is rich, and its documents bring us many names, many last names, many names of the streets and towns, and the history we teach about is not anonymous. And when we discuss topics such as Holocaust, World War II, is quite often about the numbers. When we read any book about Holocaust or any mass atrocities, about numbers of people that were killed in total in this particular city or ghetto, in this extermination camp. And with these documents, we try to discuss these topics from the perspective of individuals that have names and last names. And actually, this is something that the patron of our institute since 2009, the JHI has patron, it's historian Emanuel Ringelblum. And well, he cared about something we can call as a micro-history. And he believed that the perspective of individuals is important, is worth documenting, preservation and dissemination in the future. Like, he believed that the history is not only about the great events from the perspective of politicians or policymakers, but it's not less important is the perspective of ordinary person. So this is like one aspect of our education, this individual perspective. And when we read these documents, and you know, our collection, like somehow the Onek Shabbat collection stops in February 1943. You don't have post-war documents in this collection, which means that there is no post-war approach to what happened during the war. And what's interesting, important, and also inspiring for us and for people who read the documents is something we can call, like in Polish, it would be życie mimo wszystko. In English, I would call it like maybe life after all, or life despite everything. When you read documents, you see something like very universal, even though it's a very specific context of the Holocaust document, is universal, that people, even in front of the extreme circumstances as Holocaust, in front of death, they like have this very strong desire to survive and to you know, to do everything to survive. So this is like very, like, it gives a lot to us and to people who work with these documents. And of course, as I mentioned before, the exhibitions, like they are somehow kind of in the heart of our education, because in the normal times before pandemic, quite often we organized, for example, workshops and other activities after visiting the the exhibition. So somehow being in our building and visiting our exhibitions gives us the idea of what we can share with the group. It was either the history of, because the exhibition about the Onek Shabbat group is not like a typical exhibition about the Holocaust or World War II. What's for us the most important in the exhibition is the Onek Shabbat and the people of Onek Shabbat as the example of kind of intellectual and civil resistance of Polish Jews during the war. So this is what's for us the most important, or one of the most important aspects of this education. And House of Prayer is related to the topic of Jewish religion and culture. So I would say what we have in our collection and what we have in our institute somehow define our educational activities, because it gives us a lot somehow. It guides us how we should educate, with what materials, and what topics should be our priority, even though these topics are not the only ones that we are taking care of.
Oh, you kind of answered my next question. I wanted to ask how the fact you are part of this so important archive is reflected in your
and I prepared also like maybe bigger answer to that if you don't mind, because I mean because it's a lot, but we can benefit from this collection building and everything. So I just made a note for myself to tell 3 aspects, because this whole collection is about, I mean, this collection, sometimes I'm using different names for the same collection of documents. Sometimes I call it the Onek Shabbat Archive, Ringelblum's Archive, or the Underground Archive of Warsaw Ghetto, which is actually the same collection of documents that presents the story of the Holocaust, or rather the story of individuals in front of Holocaust from Jewish perspective. And of course, as the education department, we benefit a lot from what happened in JHI, in other departments in the past, because documents were in original half written in Polish, half in Yiddish, partly in Hebrew, but now they are all translated to Polish, some of them also to English. They are described in almost 40 volumes by our scientific department. They're like scanned, available online, which means that we can only use them. We can select what's most important for us. So the fact that the other employees of the JHI in the past did this great work, now we can only use what's important for us. And I would say the documents we have somehow cover the topics we are educating about. So it's the topics like Holocaust and the fate of Polish Jews during World War II. And also the culture and the religion of the Polish Jews. This is the core of the topics in our education, on workshops, seminars, lectures, and publications. But the other aspect is also our headquarters, the building we are located in, because our building now, the address is 3/5 Tłomackie Street. Before the war, it was Tłomackie 5. It's like one of the few buildings that served the Jewish community of Warsaw even before the war, and during the war and after the war. So the history happened in this building, and it has this, as we can call it, like genius loci, like of this place is not the only address on the map. It has something in many layers. Like before the war, it was the headquarters of the Central Judaic Library, like main Judaic Library, and the Institute for Judaic Studies. During the war, it was headquarters for Jewish social self-help, and also the Onek Shabbat group had meetings here. And after the war, since 1947, is a headquarters of the Jewish Historical Institute. So somehow the fact that we are here, we as Jewish Historical Institute, somehow we are feeling responsible for educating about these topics. And of course, the third aspect that I mentioned many times, but this is really important, is the perspective of individuals, but in a way that there's always a chance for some kind of civil and intellectual resistance. Like this is the questions that quite often we but also many people maybe are asked, that how we can describe resistance, and quite often the answer is like resistance means like fighting with guns, and ammunition and everything. But you know, the Onyx Shabbat is a great example of another type of resistance, that even if you don't have guns and you cannot shoot your enemies, it doesn't mean that you cannot do anything. And you know, in case of the Onyx Shabbat, describing the life and death of Jews during the war meant something, because first of all, informations about that were sent abroad, and at some point they were spread in the BBC radio in 1942 in June. But also, thanks to these documents, now, even though most of Polish Jews perished during the Holocaust, now you know, the history of the nation is not forgotten thanks to this work, which means it's a great example that this intellectual civil resistance made a difference and makes sense.
Really. What are the visitors during, let's say, normal times? And also, which group or organizations participate in your programs? And of course, during these days, we must add what kind of changes COVID-19 brought in this context.
Yeah, well, I would maybe focus more on the groups that the education department deals with. Yeah. Well, first of all, we are focused on working with students and teachers. But to gather students here to the JHI, we have to contact teachers first, which means that we organize some seminars, summer and winter academies for teachers, at least twice a year. Last year, we organized 3 seminars where we can share with teachers, you know, briefly speaking, like what we are as the JHI, what collection of documents we have, what's located in our building, what our exhibitions are about, and how you can use what's in our collection in your education. So we are gathering teachers here, you know, with this idea and hope that later on they are richer with the knowledge and the materials that we gave them, and they will come back with the students here, or they would use this knowledge in a class. So we organize those seminars for years, and we have like huge group of teachers that participated even more than once, because we organize also seminars on, let's say, basic and the more advanced level, and also another seminar related only to the topic of the religion and the culture of the Jews, not related to the war and the Holocaust history. So these are teachers, and through teachers, we try to reach students as well, like mostly students from Polish schools. And our offer to them is to participate in guided tour, workshop. And this is something we can offer them in our building, but also walking tour in a former Jewish district, former ghetto, is something we can offer them. And also together with Association Children of the Holocaust, Stowarzyszenie Dzieci Holokaustu, and the Polin Museum, we organized for many years a contest, the knowledge contest for the mixed group of teachers and students. So last year we haven't organized it because of the pandemic, but maybe this year we can come back to the tradition of organizing the contest. So this is our offer for students, students from the primary and the high school. The third group are students from universities. We organized to them or for them some kind of study visits. Mostly they were students of Judaic studies or Hebrew language studies or historical studies who were interested in our activities, but enriched by some lectures of our scientific department's members. They were maybe not interested in workshop itself so much, but they wanted, to visit our exhibition, maybe to have walking tour in a former Jewish district, plus some lecture of our scientific employee or visit in the archive. So that was maybe what we offered the group of students. But also there were students and teachers from abroad. This is definitely sounds like something like 2019 and earlier. They were one of the examples is like Erasmus Plus project. Many schools from Poland cooperated with schools from Germany, Czech Republic, and other countries, and they were interested in doing something which is available in English. And this is how like school students from many countries plus Polish group, they were visiting us and participating in workshops and some guided tours. But also there were many like projects or study visits related to the topics of Holocaust. There were a group of students who came to Poland for 1 or 2 weeks, and part of their tour, mostly they were like somehow related not only to the Holocaust, but like the history of Polish Jews. At some point they were stepping into the JHI. So these were this, you know, foreign students group that visited us so much. Of course, Warsaw inhabitants. Between late spring and early fall, we organized also walking tours. We have like 8 to 10 different topics of our tours. So this is actually for everybody, but this is obviously is taking place in Warsaw. So Warsaw inhabitants or people visiting Warsaw in the summertime, they were participating in these activities. For years, we cooperate with events or associations who are responsible for Zinger Festival. This is a culture event that takes place always in Warsaw in August. Science Festival organized by Warsaw University in September. And also, this is something organized by the city of Warsaw, is the Night of the Museums. So this is these 3 events organized or coordinated by somebody else that we participated in and offered guided tours, walking tours, or workshops. And the COVID changes, I would say, well, we had this a short COVID window last summer, early fall, that we had these restrictions not so strict that we were able to organize some walking tours, also workshops for students, and we organized in the summer 2 seminars for teachers. So we used these 2-3 months to organize as much as it's possible with, of course, respecting the restrictions here at the JHI. But, you know, since late October, November, we are closed again. So we moved our activities to online. Like last year, we organized a couple of workshops and also seminar for teachers in December. And this is our plan for the, you know, next months to organize everything we plan to online, with hope that either vaccination process helps us to come back to what was before, and the spring, because some activities like walking tours around the city can, you know, you can more or less safely gather people and walk with face masks around the former Jewish district. This is something, let's say, available even before the pandemic ends, with respecting some restrictions. So we're looking forward for, you know, having spring, maybe April or May.
Real. You mentioned before a DELET project and also the exhibitions. So can you describe a bit about your educational programs from the last couple of years, and specifically those 2 projects?
Okay, well, so of course we have some cycles, that some events we try to organize every single year. One of the priorities is this seminars that we call Summer Academy and Winter Academy. This is for Polish teachers. And also last year we organized this seminar, Judaism in the Synagogue. And so those seminars and also workshops and lectures for students, this is something we organize always. And of course, the series of walking tours that we call Get to Know Jewish Warsaw between spring and autumn. This is what we organize. But what's more, we are part of the project that is called Jewish Culture Heritage 2020-2024. This is what we can call Norwegian grants financed by Norway and the EEA grant. And together with Museum Poland, we participate there. So this is like financed both by Norway and EEA grants and the Ministry of Culture and National Heritage in Poland. And this project for these 4 years is focused on digitalization process. So we have funds for digitalizing part of our collection that is not online yet, and use it to publish, to organize exhibitions and to organize some educational events with using these new documents that were not available online before. Also, there are projects that, for example, happened once or twice in the past. For example, we organized kind of seminar for foreign students, ambassadors of Onek Shabbat in 2018 and 19. There were 2 editions. That was a project for, the participants were from Hillel organization at Penn State University. So that was this seminar for American students that in a week we tried to educate them about the World War II history of Polish Jews and what was before, but we were focused mostly on the Holocaust story. We visited Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial. We spent a couple of days in Warsaw. So that was kind of educational project for foreign students. Another project that is, I think, worth mentioning and somehow is related to Israel as well, and I think that might be interesting. It's a project that we called Synagogue in Oni, Georgia, the traces of Polish and Georgian heritage in Israel. So this is something we organized in 2019, and we kind of follow up of this project is a kind of short, I don't know if you can call it documentary movie that summarized the effects of the project, and this is available on our YouTube channel with English subtitles. So maybe at some point we can share the link to that. But the idea for the project starts with the legend that the rabbi from Georgian city of Oni got inspired by the great synagogue of Tłomackie that was located vis-a-vis to our headquarters before the war. And according to the legend, he was inspired by this architecture, and he wanted to build similar synagogue in Oni, in Georgia. And this community of Georgian Jews in Oni were leaving Georgia and moving to Israel between 60s and 90s of 20th century. And actually almost every single Jew from Oni moved to Israel, mostly to Beersheba, where they have their own synagogue. And this project we did with 3 universities, Cardinal Stefan Wyszyński University in Warsaw, Ben Gurion University in Beersheba, and also Georgia University in Tbilisi, together with Foundation of Polish Modern Art. And students from these 3 universities and scientific crew from these universities and photographer, we went to Oni. We did some documentation on the 2 Jewish cemeteries and on the synagogue, and later on we moved for a couple of days to Israel to meet this Georgian Jewish community in Beersheba. And we prepared kind of summary what we found out, and maybe the movie would tell you what exactly we found out. But for us, it was like great opportunity to see how ideas and influences between Warsaw migrated to Oni and then to Beersheba. And the starting point was our neighborhood, the great synagogue of Tłomackie. So this is an example of like event that happened once, but maybe it can be part like a beginning of something bigger in the future. And the project was a part of a program, Culture That Inspires, that was organized by Polish Ministry of Culture and National Heritage. 2 other projects I wanted to mention is one is also international. One is called Rethink Project. It's a part of Erasmus Plus program, where with 7 other organizations, including Memorial de la Shoah from France, but also Erinnerung from Austria, we prepared some kind of online publication called Teacher's Guide to Remembrance Education. And this is an effect of work of 8 institutions to publish like one universal guidebook for teachers all around Europe, that at some point in their educational activity, they have to deal with visiting memorial sites, for example, or dealing with remembrance education. So this is like the guidebook that maybe some inspiring ideas they can find. And this is also available online on the Rethink project. Yeah, and the last one that took place in our department recently is an audio guide that we prepared for our permanent exhibition, what we've been unable to shout out to the world in English and Polish. It haven't started yet. We are waiting for the opening of the cultural institutions again, but it will be possible to visit our exhibition and use this guidebook with your own phone. So even, this is very, I think, quite secure for visitors. You don't have to loan any object, any headphones or anything. You can just use your own phone with internet and visit the exhibition and follow our I would say vision of how to visit our exhibition, because our main exhibition is not typical chronological exhibition. You can visit it in many ways, and our narrative in audio guide is just an example, our suggestion that might be helpful for visitors.
I would like to mention that in the invitation for this event, we add a link for a few projects of the JHI. So people who want can press this link, and they'll find also link for your YouTube channel with the short movie about this project, the synagogue in Oni. Sorry. Let's switch for a different kind of questions. What kind of reactions or feedbacks do you get from the visitors? I mean, I assume that there is quite a wide scale of different reactions.
Yeah, well, that's true, but you know, mostly people who are sharing their thoughts with us, it's mostly positive or very positive and very inspiring. For example, seminars with our teachers. Of course, the group of people who is coming here, there are people who are interested in the topic and they're here because they want to be here. So discussions with them are very inspiring for us. And for example, we always, after the seminars, we are asking for feedback. We are sending kind of survey in email, and we are asking what was good and what was bad in your opinion, and what would you like to have in the future if we organize, for example, a seminar on advanced level, for example. So this is like one of the source of the feedback for us, which is very inspiring because we know what topics we should cover in the future, or what materials teachers would be expecting from us. And this is probably something that later on I would mention also, but for example, the book we publish in education departments is a kind of effect of those opinions after the seminars, because the teachers wanted kind of the book that would summarize the story of the Onek Shabbat and the Jewish faith during the war from that perspective. And also people who are, for example, participating in our walking tours in a former Jewish district, former northern district, and former ghetto. Many of them, they would share with us, I mean, this part of people who are in age of maybe 50, 60 plus, and they would share their opinion of living there just after the war. Or even if they're older, they would share some maybe pre-war opinions, but this is not so frequent. Or they would ask about, you know, literature or documents, or if this place was located here or there. So, you know, there are also people that I'm very happy, because in the first years when I was working here on the guided tours or the walking tours, many people were like in the age of 40, 50, 60 plus, which is great. But I was thinking that it would be great to have also younger people who would be interested in the topic. And I was happy that in the last 2 years, maybe the amount of younger people is also participating in those walking tours. And I'm not really sure what would be the reason. Probably there isn't one, but for example, from few different people, I heard questions about the book. Maybe you heard Król, or, you know, the King of Warsaw. It was a novel published by Szczepan Twardok, Polish author, that's recently the Canal Plus television made a TV series based on that book, for example. And the part of the plot took place in Nalewki Street, one of the most famous street of Jewish Warsaw. And then people that read that book, maybe they could get lost, because, you know, sometimes even if you have the pre-war address in Warsaw, it's not actual anymore, because the street doesn't exist or is located somewhere else. So somehow it looks that the pop culture or the literature could be something that would encourage people to participate in our events and look for the answers there. And for example, you know, to tell a few words about the workshops, I realized that, you know, one important part of our exhibition is a place where we present the testaments of two teenagers, Nachum Grzywacz and David Graber. These two guys were responsible of like burying 10 metal boxes with documents from the Onek Shabbat collection at some point in August 1942 under the building of 68 Nowolipki Street. and many students is in their age, like, and they're like 16, 18, so they can somehow feel that these testaments are not written by somebody like, you know, older than them with different experience. You know, they see that this, you know, it's not normal and not natural to be 18, 19 and write your own testament. And, you know, these documents, for example, ask questions. They are interested in about the whole story because they have, you know, this perspective of concrete people with name, last name, but also that they can find some similarities between maybe themselves, maybe not because they have experience of the war, but they have at least similar age, and that could be the starting point. So, and sometimes, you know, when documents on the exhibition or on the workshops, they're covering the topic of some particular city or street, people who are from this location, they would ask maybe more questions because it's like, is this trigger for them? They hear maybe the name or they feel some similarity between the person they read documents about and themselves, and they would ask questions. So mostly it's rather something inspiring, an example of the academies, but also questions about, you know, the past. This is something that we have a lot on the walking tours, and the questions about, you know, the personal stories. This is something what we have when we work with documents, that they are not anonymous, I would say.
What you would say are the main challenges you deal with at the educational daily work? Mm-hmm. And is there any difference between, for example, Jewish visitors to Polish visitors?
Well, recently the biggest challenge is the fact that we are closed. But even before, the problem was that not all of the teachers and students who wanted to visit us had a chance, because, you know, Warsaw is in the middle of Poland, but still it's not so easy to organize the trip for one day at Warsaw to visit us. So maybe some kind of solution, at least at some point, is that we have this online offer for students and for teachers that, you know, even if they're far away, this is like for free or for a very small amount of money, they can participate in our events. So that was one of the challenges before, that we were not able to reach for students and teachers who are living not in the like Warsaw region, I would say. But about this difference, well, of course, you know, in every single country, the history in the guidebook at school is a bit different. So, you know, if you have visitors, even if they are like Jewish visitors, but they are from different country, not only from Israel, but, you know, from United Kingdom, from United States, from France, the reality of like Poland occupied by Nazi Germany is not fully understandable, because the situation of Jews was different in Poland and in France at some point. For example, in 1941, so maybe, you know, understanding the reality of how it was to be Jewish and non-Jewish in German occupied Poland, maybe that's something that needs to be described during, you know, guided tour or workshops for foreign students.
Not long ago, as you mentioned also before, you published the book titled "The Archive: More Important Than Life," which is actually a project of the educational department, which I think is not something very common. And this is an opportunity to recommend actually for everyone to read this book. It's very interesting, and it's available in Polish and in English, and it's also as an ebook. But why did you decide to do this project as educational department, and what do you think about the result?
Well, first of all, we try to listen to our teachers, and we are asking them what would they need, and what they were asking about quite often, they wanted to have some kind of scientific or popular scientific summary of the Polish Jews World War II history and the history of the Onek Shabbat. Well, because at the JHI in the recent years, the people who were responsible for that did an amazing job to publish almost 40 volumes with documents from Ringelblum archive. These volumes are available on paper and also online in Polish, and so far 4 volumes are in English, also available in paper and online. But, you know, this is like 40 volumes, like thousands of pages, and even though each volume has a great scientific description. So even if you're not professional, you can read that, but it's still a lot. Like teachers, even if they're like history teachers, they have to cover the whole history, not just World War II, which means that not all of the people have time to read all of those 40 volumes, even introduction to these volumes. So they were interested in something maybe smaller, but professionally made. So we thought that, many departments here did a great job, like scientists and translators, they prepare those volumes, digitalization process and digitalization department offer people access to these documents. And, the documentation of Jewish heritage covers, like, brings as many pictures of the former Jewish Warsaw. And, these are many documents here and there. And we thought that it would be good to offer something for teachers, which is like accessible and available to anybody who is not professional, but who is interested in the topic. And that's the point we realized that, this is not the book only for teachers, but for actually everybody. Because, it's challenging, but we thought it could be, bring us and other people many profits to offer a book that, this is popular science that looks good, has nice design, but in the same time, it's based on historical sources and prepared and checked by professionals. So this is the reason why we decided to write and also publish it. And then we translated into English, and then COVID came from Wuhan. So that was the moment that printed books came to JHI, and then we were not able to share them as much as we wanted. We also prepared an ebooks, which gives people all around the world to access to these books. But our feedback mostly we got from teachers, that we gave them this book after our seminars, and mostly they were like happy to have this one guidebook that in the same time would offer the link to the book. If they are looking, for like more detailed knowledge about this or that topic. So that was our idea, to offer a kind of handbook with the most important information that looks good, and at the same time it helps you to find, like, more about this particular topic you're looking information about. And pandemic didn't give us a chance to spread information and to organize meetings here at Jewish Historical Institute about the book. We organized an online event in August. It's recorded and it's on our website. But still, the book, I guess, won't be outdated. It will be actual as much next year in 2022 and later, which means that, when the time is good, we would like to, promote this book more and more. And we think that, maybe the even upcoming series of walking tours that we would like to organize in since April will be a great chance to promote the book. Hopefully it will be possible.
Okay, so maybe last question before we let the audience to ask their questions. Educators, maybe if we'll have time, we'll speak more about international projects, but educators and general public who wish to visit at JHI or to offer project with, how and to whom should they address or contact?
Yeah, I think that, if it's about the project, even if the project will be about the education, I think the best is to contact the JHI management, because mostly the projects involve many people from many departments. So I think it's something that must be considered by the head of the JHI. But if it's about our educational offer, like maybe lectures and workshops, it's like our email, edukacja@jhi.pl. So yeah, those two addresses would be the best. And in general, sometimes we describe what we are organizing, and people who would like to participate can find information that we share. And I think to to not miss anything, this is, I think, the moment I would like to recommend both follow our website and Facebook, especially website that has also English version, but also on Facebook we publish more and more in English, and newsletter, and also Instagram. I think our social media and website are like the best way to see what's going on now and what's going to happen in the future of the JHI.
We have already 2 questions, so I think it's also questions for the educational department, maybe also generally about the JHI. So the first one is, do you have programs, materials about Jews in Poland after the war?
Well, we don't have any like educational programs, but we have materials definitely, and I think maybe I would start with the short history of the roots of our institution, because the JHI was founded in 1947, and it was the kind of transition from the historical commission of the Central Committee of Polish Jews. Central Committee of Polish Jews was this like political and social representation of this part of Polish Jewry that survived Holocaust. And this historical commission was collecting, among the other activities, some testimonies of people who, those Polish Jews that survived the Holocaust and would contact Warsaw or any regional branch of historical commission. And these testimonies, thousands of them are in our possession. I'm not sure if they are, I mean, they are not online, and I don't know if they will be, because you have so many personal data of people, and probably to publish it you need to wait some more. But I think that's the great source of information about the post-war Polish Jewish community, if we can say. Especially, it's very valuable because you can read there how and where these people survived and managed to survive until the post-war times. But and to anybody who is interested in that, I think our archive department would be the best address to ask about the details of this collection and the ways how to read the documents.
Okay. Another question: if the Warsaw Ghetto was burned to the ground by the Germans, what can you show on your walking tour?
Yeah, well, actually, we have many like ways how to present it. I would like to start with mentioning 2 of our walking tours. One we call like the like, I don't know if I can translate it correctly, but like visible traces of Warsaw Ghetto, because almost like not every single but big part of former Warsaw Ghetto was burned to the ground, but there are still few buildings that we can, including our headquarters, that we can put on the map and we can discuss through the perspective from the we can use those buildings as a starting point to discussion of this or that element. For example, the JHI can cover, like our building can cover many stories of the Onek Shabbat history, but also the buildings that survived. But on our way, there are other buildings, like for example, at Chłodna Street, there is a tenement house where at Chłodna 20, where the head of Judenrat, Adam Czerniaków, lived, for example. And also at Chłodna, we have kind of artistic installation in the place where there was formerly the bridge between one or another part of the ghetto. And also there is a building of the courts at former Leszno Street. So the building, even though it was in the heart of Warsaw Ghetto, was excluded from the ghetto. Germans wanted to keep this building outside, but it was the place to meet between the families that they were divided, but because the ghetto was established, it was a place where people would like to, hide, enter from the ghetto side, remove the armband with Star of David and somehow use this building to escape the ghetto. So there are very few buildings, but we are trying to use these few buildings as an example to discuss the story of different aspects of Warsaw Ghetto. The other walking tour topic is impressions of Jewish Warsaw and Warsaw Ghetto. Like the other route is mostly on the places where nothing has survived, but at least monuments and street names are reminding us about the past, for example. So there is a street named by Mordechai Anielewicz. There was a street that commemorated the ghetto fighters, the ghetto heroes. There is a 200 long meter part of the former Nalewki Street. So, you know, sometimes just names, statues, and small details in the architecture can remind us some stories. So we are trying to use the surroundings as much as it's possible. And sometimes you can say, I mean, sometimes when you see that nothing has survived, also tells you something. So we are trying to put our narrative to use as much as it's possible what's left, but also we are not rejecting these parts of the city that nothing has survived, because even though nothing is survived on the ground, a lot surfaced, like a lot survived under the surface of the ground, but also a lot survived in the names. So this is also a great starting point for us.
Is Burodno cemetery is open to the public, and do you show it in your tours? Well,
we are not showing in our tours because somehow the better located is another cemetery at Okopowa Street. But yeah, Brudno Cemetery is opened, and there is an exhibition at the cemetery, and I know the Jewish community of Warsaw is letting people in, and it's possible to visit. So it's of course different than Okopowa, and not so much has survived, but yeah, both cemeteries are great because they tell a lot about the story of Warsaw Jews.
Okay, we have here a question. I think it's more for I would say maybe more for Maria Ferenc that will host there on February, but I'll ask you and you'll decide whether you want to answer. In whose possession is the original Ringelblum archive? So I think the answer is JHI. And what is being done to find the missing third archive, I guess third part of the archive, which was hidden?
Well, to answer the first question, the Association of Jewish Historical Institute is in the possession of the archive and the building. And I'm working at the culture institution called Jewish Historical Institute. So this is like this, you know, public-private partnership. And Ministry of Culture and National Heritage is managing the Jewish Historical Institutes. And the association of JHI is a private association that's altogether create what we have here as the JHI. And you know, the third part, yeah, maybe definitely like Maria Ferenc, now Dr. Maria Ferenc, would be a great person to answer that question. But you know, two persons who worked in the past in the JHI, Agnieszka Haska and Aleksandra Bańkowska, they wrote an article in this paper Zagłada Żydów that is published by the Center for the Research, that is part of like you know, for example, I don't know what's the official name, Center of the Research for the Holocaust, and they made this article in which they stated that most probably in something we can call the third part never existed, and you know, it's hard to prove that it existed. And if you look for the search for the archive, then you see that the first part, 10 metal boxes, were found at former Nowolipki 68th Street, because one of the three members of the group, Hershwasser, he knew that the 10 metal boxes were buried under Nowolipki 68 building, and they were found. But two milk cans with documents, they were buried in the same location, but these three survivors didn't know about that, and they were found 4 years later, like accidentally. And that's probably one of the reasons why many people would believe that, you know, if it was like that, maybe some other documents were buried somewhere else. And I don't think I can say they were buried or they were not buried. At least what we know for sure, that 2 parts were buried and they were found. But it's also worth to remember that we are not sure if the Onek Shabbat members buried and hid every single paper they got in their possession, because especially in the summer of 1942, it was this moment that before they planned to bury the collection at these 2 different locations, to have 2 copies of each document. But after all, they buried everything in one place, and sometimes 2 copies of the same document, they were in the same metal box. So we are actually not sure if there was something more.
Interesting. We're almost run out of time, so maybe
I would tell you more. I mean, I know you have also a question, but I was thinking it would be good to mention maybe the new exhibition that we have at the JHI. And this is something that, it's the new exhibition that's supposed to be opened on November 16. It's called Where Art Thou, which the title comes from the book of Genesis. And we plan to open in November 16, which was the 80th anniversary of the closure of Warsaw Ghetto. But, the exhibition, as it was closed, it's still, because the cultural institutions are not opened yet. But the idea for the exhibition was to propose a different approach than a chronological narrative, and present 11 positions that would represent different state of feelings of ghetto inhabitants, such as fear, uncertainty, faith, the compassion, and they're accompanied by the audio records recorded by the actors. I mean, those testimonies are from our collection, and 4 actors recorded it. So that was the idea. And I think today or recently on our main website at the JHI, there is a short 4 or 5 minutes long movie that is presenting it. I think it's on our main website of the JHI. There's a video from the, it's available on our YouTube, but I hope if we have time, I can share the link immediately. I don't know, it contains, okay, I shared the video. I'm not sure if it contains English subtitles, but even if not, more or less, you can see what's the idea for the exhibition, that you would not really go and read something that what happened at, in November 16, what happened later is rather more universal approach to the story of Warsaw Ghetto.
Great. I'll just copy this and I'll send it to all the attendees also. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I would like to thank you, Bartek, very much. Thank you all for taking part on this 3rd event of our series. And thank you, Dr. Bartosz, Boris, Bartek. Thank you to Mורשת Mordechai Anílevich Memorial Education and Research Center, to the Emanuel Ringelblum Jewish Historical Institute, and to Yulia Mackiewicz from the Polish Institute in Tel Aviv. We'll be happy if you could fill in the survey we put when this webinar will end, and hope that everybody will keep safe, and this COVID issues will be ended as soon as possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.